morning. This is me on the right, the big kid. These are my siblings. We were raised in Rochester, New York, in the suburbs, back in the 60s. We are part of 78 million baby boomers that want to get out of the workforce in the next 20 years. Well, I went to school to become an architect, and the school suggested I do something different. The grading system in its feedback said, don't be an architect. I was distraught. I didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine, a Catholic priest, said, why don't you go volunteer at a homeless shelter? And I said, what's that? I was raised in the burbs. I know nothing about homeless shelters. But I went down there and volunteered. And this is what I saw. This fellow's on his deathbed, and he's actually going to die about 10 years prematurely because of poverty in the United States. So being raised in the burbs in the 60s, great expectations, anything's possible. I looked at the situation and thought, what? How can we let people die from poverty in the United States? And I never understood it, and I still don't understand it 30 years later. So I was very intent on figuring out how do we get people out of poverty. And here's the bridge that I found that is coast to coast helping people get out of poverty. Yeah, sure, cross the bridge. You can get over there, pull your stuff out of the bootstraps. I'm not going with you because of that stuff there in the middle. We're not intentional about getting people out of poverty. We assume it's all going to happen. And we don't need to go into the details, but there's a lot of peril. As soon as you make your really big step, something can happen bad. So I actually did some study on, are there any programs helping people out of poverty? That's right, I employed the entire system there. And I found, with my first grant, I found that there really actually was a program on Earth in Iowa that was very interested in doing this. And they had talked to about 5,000 people. They had 115 different anti-poverty projects, and they said, well, they wanted to know, are we getting people out of poverty? So they asked all these people, and they found out that very few over a 5-year period get out of poverty. And they said, well, of the few that did get out, what was the biggest program making the biggest difference? And they found out that people married somebody with a job. Turns out 2 jobs are better than one, one's better than none. And they stepped back and said, wow, should we create a dating service? Is this really the best idea we have on planet Earth about poverty? Well, that wasn't highly fundable back in the day, but we were intent on finding something, and so I moved to Iowa, and we found a relationship with the Casey Foundation. They said, go out and find anything that's working. And over a decade, we created this thing called Circles. And it was fabulous. We finally figured out how to pull all these pieces together so that anybody in the audience could connect up with anybody who wanted to get out of poverty and have that be safe and productive. We also found out that if you put $1 into this process, $2 come back to the community in welfare savings, and $4 on earned income. The first 58 families were now making about $960,000 more a year, and they had been on welfare for 4 years, and they got off in 10 months. So we knew we had something, and the word started to spread, and we found out wonderful things about people. If you connect anybody with somebody who wants to get out of poverty, and they're doing everything they can do to make that happen, people will do anything to support them. We are really very good-natured and generous at our core. So the word spread, and we got into 23 different states. CBS News, Evening News, just came out to Ohio last week and filmed us, so I think we're going to expand pretty quickly here. But we're now in 62 sites. Our goal is to be in 1,000 places and have that tipping point that we just saw happen. We're here in New Mexico. I moved down here with my wife to be closer to her family, and so we're starting in the South Valley very soon. Now, one of the things we notice is if you get people in the room together and say, hey, we want to help you get more money and get off welfare, we actually get good data. In the first year we collected data from coast to coast, we found that our families were making 88% more money during the year that the whole national average went down by 3%. And then we realized, because there's 78 million baby boomers leaving the workforce, that we got a challenge here, right? This is no longer just a humanitarian effort. We could actually grow pretty well in this country with a lot of poverty, but it's not going to be the case going forward. Right now, the Employment Policy Foundation suggests that we may have 24% of all positions remaining vacant in this country because people are not qualified for them. Isn't that amazing? It's the situation right now, actually. And so we've got to involve the entire community You cannot leave it just to institutions to get all this done. We have got to be involved to provide informal supports that will support all the formal things that we're trying to do in their community. If we thought that the stimulus plan was expensive, let me tell you that poverty, raising children in poverty, is estimated now at $500 billion a year. And in New Mexico, it's $5 billion of that. We got 128,000 kids in poverty. So here's some solutions. First of all, we got to teach everybody about money. That's an asset, that's a liability. Go that way. Secondly, we got to qualify everyone for the workforce. We can't assume this is going to happen. We got to get really intentional about this. These guys are pretty successful. This was a great collaboration. Everyone agreed? Education and economic development need to be the new Lennon and McCartney. And we got to fix the damn bridge. This bridge it's a $500 billion bridge. It's got to get fixed. We have got to get intentional about getting everyone in New Mexico behind these 128,000 kids, get them into their future stories, have them be successful, and sustain our futures for generations to come. So finally, the solutions must now equal the problem. The problem is way up here. Solutions down here are not going to make it happen. So I invite you to join the movement. We're not on your program, but at movethemountain.org you can find out more about us. And let's get involved in getting these 128,000 kids where they need to go. Thank you.